Now, Interpol is sounding the alarm that Africa, particularly South Africa, is a prime target for cybercrime due to weak cybersecurity measures. To combat this, Interpol has launched the Africa Surge 3.0, resulting in hundreds of arrests. They're working closely with the local law enforcement to tackle ransomware, email scams, and phishing schemes that put Africans' online safety at risk. And joining me with more insight on Interpol's efforts is Business Day business writer Mudiwa Gavaza. Well, thank you so much for your time, Mudiwa. Appreciate it. I mean, just looking at, cybercrime in Africa, how big of a problem is it, particularly South Africa's vulnerability?
Good afternoon, Zinate. It's an interesting one. Africa continues to be one of the environments that sees a lot of cyber attacks, and then South Africa being seen as probably the country that sees the most attacks, on the African continent. So we are seeing a number of different efforts from a number of different body. Interpol, as you know, is the body that does a lot of your international policing. So now, when you're dealing with the internet, one of the biggest complexities is, Zinate can be in one part of the world, Mudiwa can be in another part of the world, and we can be working together on some scheme or something like that across borders and affecting people in a completely other part of the world. So if the Sinatra gets caught, how do you police that? How do you get her, to one country, or how do you effect justice? So the Interpol has taken this on as a huge point, of policing, the same way that you used to police for some of the physical crime, your international syndicates, drug groups, weapons, smuggling, and all of that stuff. Now, cybersecurity is one of those things that they're now looking at.
So would you say, Mudiwa, it's not that there's been, I guess, lack of willingness to kind of try and, mitigate, risks in this kind of arena? It's more that, I guess, authorities have been trying to figure out what to do, because obviously this is maybe a space that they're not really familiar with, and where maybe innovation is constantly running ahead of, I guess, regulatory measures.
Well, it's quite a complex situation that's out there, because when it comes to cybersecurity issues, right, one of the biggest points of vulnerability that is always pointed at is the human being, right?
Yeah.
And you can imagine that from a national point of view, a government point of view, because that's one of the things that we speak about, is to say that in the private sector, you tend to have ranks of employees that have constant cybersecurity training, same in government.
Yeah.
But the reason why government becomes the biggest point of vulnerability is because in any country, government tends to be your biggest employer. So you've got more points of vulnerability because maybe just that one person who works for, let's say, the Department of Water or something, is still using password 123. And by infiltrating that one person, you get into that department, and then from there, you can then attack the wider government machinery. So that's one of the big reasons. Interestingly enough, we had an engagement with the team from Accenture recently,
Yeah.
and they actually even pointed at simple things, to say that in a number of companies and also government departments, you just have people that still in 2024 are perhaps using very outdated machines that are very easy to infiltrate. You can have the best cybersecurity, but if you're still running on, let's say, Windows XP or something
Yes.
like that, then things are gonna be tough.
So it's also a problem of maybe lack of skills and maybe lack of training.
Interesting that you make mention of the skills factor, because Interpol actually brought out a a cybersecurity workforce report at the end of last week. So this is very recent, very new and up-to-date data. And they actually said that right now, you have, they actually show an interesting map where they say that there are about 7.1 million cybersecurity professionals in the world, and the Asia Pacific region, especially China and India, have the biggest component of that at 2.9 million, then followed by the Americas with 2.4 million. Africa as a continent
Yeah.
only has
Oh
300,000
dear.
of these cybersecurity professionals out of that pie. So there's a huge gap when it comes to even the types of people that are going to help to protect companies, that are going to help to protect governments. So there's a huge cybersecurity skills shortage that has been noted by Interpol. And in that, they do say that Africa as a continent, has the least number of cybersecurity professionals. And if I remember correctly, where South Africa does do well is that in that pie, South Africa tends to have the most of the skills that are available.
Ah, all right. I do understand that there's also a lack of investment there. Where should that be coming from?
Wow. Um, at this point, it feels like it should be coming from all corners because everyone should be in the same
Yeah.
way that you take care of your own physical security, right? Everyone needs to be taking care of their own cybersecurity. So, at an individual level and at an organization level, you do have that imperative that is on you. That's one level. But but there are also ways that you can coordinate some of the efforts. Let's say on an industry level, the banks, for example, I've spoken to a number of people that have actually said that there are a lot of efforts to try and coalesce the different banks together, because you can imagine how attacked banks in South Africa are,
Yes.
all of the different breaches we hear about. So it's incumbent on the banks to come together. It's no longer just a blue bank, red bank issue. You need to come together because you're all being attacked. So you have investment on that point of view. And then I think just the last one is that from a government point of view, one of the biggest questions that's out there is who's in charge of cybersecurity? Yes, you can have department
Yeah.
wide, but if your geopolitical issues, such as the Russia Ukraine war, can teach us anything, it's that in those conflict areas, cybersecurity has actually become military function, right? So the cybersecurity of the country is actually now being taken care of at military level, which then directs, policy and enforcement and policing for the rest of the country. So different ways in which investment can be attacked.
All right. Well, Interpol says it is bullish about its efforts to root out cybercrime. What exactly is driving this optimism?
Well, the optimism is the agreements that they have in place. They have, I can't remember the exact number, over 100 countries that are part of Interpol now. And in the same way that we're talking about educating your private sector, your public sector, there is a big drive to now educate your security forces about the different types of attacks that are out there, and then now getting them to start enforcing cybersecurity, either legislation in their own countries. That's the one level. Because for some people, you almost have this view that, oh, this is just stuff that's happening on computers, right?
Yes.
But it's only when you think about the fact that there were some very scary stats in South Africa, quite recently, where the SA Health Laboratory Service, you saw it blocked patients' lab results and
Oh,
compromised highly sensitive patient and government employee data. That's only one
yeah.
example. And then in another example, we saw that the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, has been found to have had 300 million rand lost or stolen over a 10-year period. So now you realize actually it's not just about computers. This stuff has real world impact.
Yes.
And now your policing has to stretch to actually go and find those people. And you get them to police locally, but also at the same time help with some of the international efforts as well. You've got a 419 gang or a, African prince or a what's the other one? Your swindlers, the one that are using that make you fall in love, and then
Yes,
you
the
have
dating
all
apps
of
and
those things.
Facebook. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And but a lot of that stuff is happening cross border, right? It
Yeah.
tends not to just happen to one country. So if you're going to police that, then you need to have international cooperation. So
Yeah.
Interpol told us last week that they're quite bullish about the efforts that they have in place. They have a new drive in place. I need to actually make sure that I give you the right name of that effort. They call it Africa Surge. It's now in
3.0.
its Yes, it's now in its third iteration, and last year they actually found that Trend Micro, which is a cybersecurity firm, said that it uncovered 1,500 malicious IP address, and surprise, surprise, the biggest number of those IP addresses for last year's campaign were actually found in South Africa,
Whew.
which is why we need to
Yeah.
make sure that this is a big issue that is taken on board.
Scary, scary numbers there, but at least they are making some inroads in rooting out cybercrime in Africa, and particularly SA. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights there, Mudiwa. That was business, right? For Business Day, Mudiwa Gavaza.